Ahoy! Today we're talking about some data mining for the next two gods. Along with that, there's also a tiny interesting detail that is worth mentioning first. There seems to be some sort of rework going on, visual rework likely, for Osiris. There are no further details beyond a Osiris version 2, which could mean that maybe he's just getting a texture update or maybe he's getting an alternative model for certain skins, but typically this is something that's used for remodels of some kind. I find that surprising because it's not a god that stands out to me as looking particularly bad, but we'll have to wait and see. Before we jump into the gods, a quick reminder, if you enjoy my content, feel free to vote for me at the Smite Golden Bolts. Link will be down below, would be much appreciated. So the first god that we have new information about is god 112, and that's Danzaburou. Now with Danzaburou we basically have confirmation that he's going to be a hunter. Since Ajax mentioned that the next god will be a hunter, we have no information about any other god that could fit this profile, and it makes sense with his basic attack being a projectile as well. Danzaburou is a tanuki, a raccoon dog. Lore-wise, a lot of things in his stories revolve around him tricking people, tricking other animals, as well as some aspects regarding financial things like loaning money, lending money, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that is reflected in his kit. First of all, he has a spawnable actor that acts as a decoy. I initially thought that this might mean that he basically gets Loki's old decoy, but I have a bit of a better idea with some new information that we have what this might be, potentially. We'll get to that in another ability. Some other unsorted info is that he uses some sort of stone material. I am thinking that it means that he uses stones as his projectiles. There's a new note that also says has a stone. He has a money bag model, so it's something that's attached to him, and it's a skeletal mesh that is apparently animated to. And he also has a mesh called Rocket. I still don't know what the rocket indicates, it could be many things, but the money bag seems to indicate that something in his kit functions maybe with the amount of money that he has or that others have or something. He also has a lifetime scaling, unclear what that is, might be tied to the passive maybe, and might be tied to the money bag as well. The specifics are not yet written out, and he can spawn a decoy mesh, which goes back to the decoy from earlier. His passive comes with some sort of reward. It could, for example, be that he gets interest on the gold that he has through his passive. That's something that I could imagine being possible, or just bonus gold for getting kills. His first ability has a tiny bit of new information. We already knew that it's a projectile and it has a pickup effect, so maybe you can get back the projectile, and they removed a lot of other notes that the ability originally had. Now it also has an area of effect hit. Since this is also a projectile, this could kind of work like Hell's one in Darkstance, for example, where it has an initial forward-going projectile and then it detonates in an AoE once it hits an enemy. The second ability has even more information now, as if it didn't have enough before. It's a deployable, it has a projectile, and it has a lot of different effects. It has a start and warning effect, so this builds up something over time apparently. It has an area effect, a debuff effect, a heal effect, a hit effect, a projectile effect, a targeter effect, and a landing and impact effect. However, now additionally it has pulse stacks with up to 4 stacks, it has a slow, and it also has a taunt. Now here's what I'm thinking. Since he has some form of decoy somewhere in his kit, and we won't exactly get the old Loki decoy most likely, this seems to be the most likely ability for this decoy. And that's because it comes with a slow and a taunt. That seems to be a combination of effects that would not really be useful if both worked against the same targets. If a target is getting taunted, then do you really need a slow on top of that? They're already CC'd. So what I could imagine is that this taunts minions, but slows guards, and then has these multiple pulse stacks in which it deals damage and maybe even heals allies in the area as well. That way they maintain this high clearing mechanic from old Loki that fits a trickster character very well, while putting it on a ranged character, which is generally more fair because they're more likely to fight a ranged character as well, and while not making it almost useless against any guard. While the old decoy could body block and it could hit an enemy if you lock them down for the entire duration, usually it would not have a major impact. If this now slows and has multiple pulses, there's much more of an impact against guards as well, also meaning that it sets up his basic attacks as a hunter better, so there's a lot of synergy between this, and I think that would be a very interesting fit. His third ability is a deployable mesh with spikes. It has a buff effects, debuff effects, target effects, deployable explode FX, explode, and it uses passive stacks. It has some new details though, that is a mesh fake FX, a reveal poof FX, that's probably the explode, a leaf projectile, and a leaf explode. I have a very strong feeling that this is some sort of leaf trap on the ground, and if you walk into this trap then maybe you fall down and it gets revealed that it was a trap all along, or you get hit by these spikes that are also mentioned in the ability and you take damage. I would imagine in terms of visibility this is similar to Artemis traps. When it comes to the ultimate, we still have the note that it's a deployable. It's also a device, so something that you must activate. The device is related to a charge, and it's also a projectile, so potentially a charge becoming a ball projectile. It's a target FX, a mark FX, a projectile explode, a start FX, and a debuff. And now it also has a statue poof FX. I tried to find something in Danzaburou's lore, but I couldn't find anything that relates to a statue. If anyone has more info on that specifically, let me know. But there are tanuki statues in Japan, so these statues exist, but then again there are also statues of other gods, so I'm not really sure if this will be related to the ability. It could be that this is also some form of decoy, or this is the actual decoy ability and the other one is something else, where you can basically trick the enemy similar to, I don't know, Sun Wukong Ultimate. But it does seem to work very differently, especially with the projectile and the exploding and everything. So what exactly is behind it is still unclear to me. This doesn't have that much new information, so we'll have to wait and see what this turns out to be. This is a good moment to remind you that this info is from SmiteDatamining.com and it's all subject to change, so nothing here is set in stone yet. But talking about amounts of information that we have and things that are set in stone, we also have a lot of new information about Tiamat, a surprising amount in my opinion, since she's still pretty far away from what I would think. So Tiamat is a goddess with multiple forms, often depicted as a dragon, but there are also other depictions depending on which part of her story you go by, and she would introduce a new pantheon to Smite, the Mesopotamian pantheon. From what we can tell so far, she will likely have two different forms, and I would so far speculate that she will be a warrior based on the fact that she has physical damage. We just had an assassin, we're gonna get a hunter, so it could also be a guardian, but my bet is on warrior, since certain abilities seem to be taken over from physical things as well. Her passive has an effect called Hardened Scales, which likely is some increased defense, and it comes with stacks. Outside of that, she has a bunch of other info that's not allocated to any abilities as well. The first one of that being Cruelty. This gives you increased basic attack power and physical lifesteal. Again, that's why I think she's likely a warrior. What's interesting, that was pointed out to me, is that this is the effect of Serrated Edge. So basically they copied the item effect onto her abilities in some way. Maybe that means it'll be changed. That could also mean that technically it could be turned into a magical effect of the same kind. Maybe it will just be that she has that effect inherently, and maybe she can just double it by building Serrated Edge along with it, who knows. But then again, she seems to have a lot of abilities, so she wouldn't exactly be the best person to proc Serrated Edge from what it seems. Something in her kit has a stronger effect and a weaker effect. This could be Cruelty, this could also be Hardened Scales. And now we have a really juicy bit of new information. She has a flying animation. And not only that, she has different animations for a ground and a flying mode, so to speak. So it seems that the Stand Swamp goes in line with that. Could be that she is a dragon in both forms and just walking around sometimes and sometimes flying slightly above the ground. It could be that she flies higher. Or it could be that in one of the forms she is not even in her dragon form. Her basic attack is a projectile attack with a fire mode. Could be like Fafnir, for example, I'm not sure. Fire mode isn't further specified. It applies a damage effect, so it likely burns over time, which again makes me think that something like Fafnir seems to be very likely here. Her first ability in version A has a projectile fizzle, which again seems like it might have some lingering effect, and it uses passive stacks or is somehow related to them. So it could be that the more stacks on Hardened Scales or Cruelty or whatever you have, the stronger this becomes. The B version of the first ability works with a passive somehow as well, but comes with a debuff A and a debuff B. Her second ability in version A now has a little bit of information, and that is somehow deployable. Her version B of the second ability comes with a deployable spawner. It also has some sort of effect group, which seems to be for allies, according to what Freyo thinks, an area of effect, and a warm-up. I'm not sure what a spawner is meant to be. If she can spawn things, it would make sense with her lore, but then it would also seem surprising if we have a dragon character that can also spawn multiple minions on top of that. I mean, who knows? For her third ability, we still don't have any information beyond the fact that it has an A version and a B version as well. And then for ultimate, we have some new information. The A version seems to be subdivided into 3 or 4 things, and they're called Sub A, Sub B, and Sub C so far. Sub B uses the passive stacks or is related to them. Then the B version of the ultimate itself comes with a damage over time effect that increases in-hand damage. This may somehow reflect back to that Cruelty effect as well. With a deployable mesh, and has a pet, which could just be a minion, but some sort of pet at least. And it deals damage over time. Now with a pet, it makes me wonder again if this is somehow connected to the deployable spawner from ability 2. And this could be one of the creatures from her lore that she creates to fight for her to avenge Apsu's death. So maybe we'll see Scorpion Man in game. Would be hilarious. And that is the info that we have so far. The next pet should be the one that reveals Danzaburou completely, so we'll know everything about his abilities by then. With Tiamat, it's still going to be quite a while because she's not going to come out before next year, according to Hi-Res plan, since they decided to delay her release a little bit. That, by the way, may actually explain why we have more info about her than usual already. That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did and you're new to the channel, feel free to sub button and maybe the bell so you get notified of other upcoming info for Danzaburou. I'm going to talk about him in more detail as soon as Hi-Res releases some more info, as well as obviously other data mining. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. ZiSotto, out.